Sometimes there is more truth in legends than in history.
I came to give you this. With this, you will have all the powers he did. I will teach you to use them. The Pumaman. The Pumaman. The Pumaman.
I got into acting because of a weird set of circumstances. I was a trial attorney defending doctors and hospitals, so I was an exclusively defense medical malpractice trial attorney. And there were no partners in the particular firm that I was with, and after a certain amount of time I decided that I had to be a partner because I was working very, very hard and it just was time. The person who owned the firm was not interested in making a partnership. So therefore I said, well, you make me a partner in 2 weeks or I'm leaving. And then 2 weeks later I said, thank you very much, and I left. And so I had no clients of my own because his firm was getting the physicians basically through the Medical Society of the State of New York. So anyway, long story short, I started playing football with a bunch of actors, touch football in Central Park. And they kept saying, you'd be a wonderful actor, you'd be wonderful. And I said, just, shut up and catch the pass, because they weren't the greatest athletes in the world. It turns out they convinced me to go to an acting class in the evening, and during the day I was taking depositions to support myself. I could charge them, but I wasn't doing any more trials. And then after I took a few classes for long enough and I got a very good reaction in class, I got an agent and I stopped doing depositions and went out on calls for parts, and I started reading for parts, commercials and so forth, and that's how I got into acting. And then eventually I ended up going to Los Angeles for film more than TV, because I had done some TV in New York, some soap opera work, but I didn't want to get tied down into a soap opera. They wanted me on All My Children, but I didn't want to sign a contract because I came into acting a little bit older than the average person because I had already been a lawyer, trial attorney, so I had to move fast to get into film.
Shoot.
I don't know how you would look at this looking back, but I sort of missed a couple of big opportunities just by a little bit. For example, I was one of the few actors that Lynn Stallmaster said, gee, I wish I had read you for Superman, the original Superman that Chris Reeve got. Marion Dougherty said, oh boy, I would have cast you as the killer in Looking for Mr. Goodbar, that kind of stuff. So, but be that as it may, I wanted to do film, so I kind of restricted myself to doing a lot of film. And there I started boxing and fencing and preparing for whatever role might come my way. So I was reading for a lot of projects, some TV, but mostly film. And I had a big agent, and I think the agent at that time was at ICM, which was a big agency at the time. And they called me and they said, I want you to come and meet the producer and director of this film. They're here from Italy that they're doing. It's going to be a superhero movie, and they have special effects that they have at the studio that they want to employ, and they've written a special script and so forth.
The Pumaman. We must find him and kill him.
They had seen a bunch of actors, interviewed them, and they wanted me. Right out of the box, they wanted me. So I said, that sounds fine. And they said, you'll have to come to Rome. And I said, that's okay, I'll come to Rome. And that's how it happened. Going to Rome, I really felt, if I can reconstruct my thoughts, I would say I felt pretty fine and confident that I would be able to do what was required. I didn't really know or have any expectations what was going to happen to this film. Back then, the model for doing a superhero type thing was not well known. What I had in my mind is maybe this could lead to some really wonderful film work as a vehicle, sort of like Clint Eastwood, Dirty Harry. So for me, I was thinking, well, that'd be great, even if it's sort of just a stepping stone to doing more serious work, which was the reason I was an actor, was to do some serious film work. So that's what my thought was. I wanted to do the best job I could possibly do, and I took it very seriously. Even though it was a superhero movie, I decided that I was going to play the superhero very, very straight. It didn't actually turn out that way, I think, the final product, as it turned out. But it was my job to make that character really, you know, as believable as I could. Now, when I got there, after a long sleep, because it was a long flight to Rome, and I met everybody, I have to say there were immediately some issues and problems that I saw that I was going to have to deal with. One was the initial costume that they had for the Pumaman was absolutely unacceptable. Pink colors and shoes that were little boots that were crazy, and I said, look, you know, this guy can't wear this kind of clothes. And as it turned out, what they had me wear in the end wasn't exactly the favorite idea for me, but they didn't want him to be like Superman, because he couldn't have that kind of outfit, and so they didn't want him in super tights and things, which I understood. So it came out sort of the way it came out, based on them fixing some of the stuff, because I refused to wear what they initially had for me. In London, we shot the museum shots, and that was actually done with people in the museum without permission. You know, I was going down the stairs and going whatever we did in the museum, except for the bones shot with the paleontologist, and I get thrown out of the window. That was in an actual room in the museum, if I recall correctly. And then where I get thrown out the window and I go in the tool shed and he breaks the door down. The other thing that we did there is we went out in the countryside. They found a huge manor, and we shot that scene out there. And the running scene along the Thames, which is one of the first scenes that we shot. That was all shot right there in England.
Hey, Tony, ease up a minute, will you? Again, I'll break my rhythm.
The rest of the film was done in Rome, except for the final shots with Sydney. I was out near the ocean somewhere, outside of Rome somewhere. Quite a distance, but obviously by the ocean. The interior scenes, the scenes where I'm tearing up the Jaguar's roof, the scenes with Donald in the lab, those were all done in the studio there. And all the special effects were done in the studio. He spoke English. He didn't speak great English. He spoke fairly well. And so we would have certain expressions that we would use, which means he approved of what was being done. So I would discuss scenes with him, and he would tell me what he wanted to achieve in a particular scene. The problem was Alberto Di Martino, and I think somebody else with him, who wrote the script in Italian based on the Chariot of the Gods concept that they had seen or read about. And that was the nexus of their idea for the film.
Do you think you can decipher it?
Yes, it's an Aztec inscription about a man with the blood of a god in his veins, who comes from outer space.
And when you translate that into English from Italian, it didn't always work. But I obviously couldn't rewrite the whole script then, but what would happen is, during the shooting of some scenes, I would say to them, this is not English, this isn't going to work. It would have to be something more along these lines to make it. So I did a little bit of the, I guess you'd say, oral rewriting of the script as we shot.
Teach me some Indio swear words, Verdinho. I've used mine all up.
So we worked it out, and then we had a little expression where he would say, quote, beautiful good, close quote, and I would know that we had, you know, a shot that he was happy with, and that's what we would say. So it became like a little bit of an in-joke on the set. Beautiful, good. Well, Donald was a terrific character, a real character in real life guy. And so for him, I think this was just a fun project, and he could do it easily and, collect his salary, so whatever they were paying him. But he was somebody that added the spice to the movie because he was a terrific villain.
Finally, we found him. Now the only task is to kill him. And that's the easiest job of all.
On and off the set, he was great to work with because there was tremendous amount to play against. But also off the set, he had his young girlfriend there. We would go for drinks, and he would light Sambuca. He'd buy me a Sambuca and light it on fire. Have the guy with coffee beans on the top, and his girlfriend was there, and he would be, goofing around with her. He was a really interesting guy. And he was fun for me to have. Not only as an actor and working with him on the scenes, because we both were aware that this is a superhero movie and has kind of a crazy premise in a lot of ways. But he took it seriously, and he did his evil genius spot with a certain amount of gravitas, so I could play against that.
You're just a small, insignificant human being.
Well, Miguel, when I first met him, he actually had done a lot of boxing in Mexico. He had been a boxer. So we talked boxing when we first met, and his English was not great.
You see in the dark, you fall like a cat. You are the Pumaman.
I think part of the time he had a little difficulty with saying certain lines. But he was in it. He gave it his all, for sure.
With this, you will have all the powers he did. I will teach you to use them.
It was interesting to deal with him and his size and his strength, and so that worked. What I remember was that sometimes the way he would deliver a line, you couldn't really understand it really well, or it would have to be reshot because he was having difficulty with the English part of it.
Tell me the truth, Vidinho. Who am I?
You have the blood of the gods coming from other worlds.
She was a married woman living in Rome. I think she was very happy to have this acting role. I think she was trying to become more of a celebrity star there in Italian cinema and television. I don't know how successful she was. I think she had some success before the movie and had some name recognition.
Professor Barnes? Did a dinosaur get away?
No, but he sure looked like one.
I don't know how much chemistry came through on that. I know what was going on when we were acting the scenes. I don't know how much, whether because of the lines and because of the plot, whether it was able to really come through on film as much as maybe the director wanted. But it worked on up to a certain level, I would say. The physical challenges of the film were basically involving the fight scenes and the flying scenes. That was the most physically demanding part of the job. But I didn't really have to do anything to prepare for that. I was more than ready and physically strong enough to do all of it. The scene where I'm tearing up the bricks on the wall, I don't quite make it, and it actually was pretty rough on my hands because the bricks didn't really break away as well as they had designed them to, and they really wanted me to be really desperately clawing at those bricks. So I remember that was an issue, and actually got to be a little uncomfortable when we shot that. Well, they wanted to show how powerful the Pumaman was, and to get at those guys that were in the Jag. So they had a lead, it was lead at the top of that roof. So it was soft, but it was still lead. So it wasn't like a breakaway, real easy, light roof. It was lead. And you had to bend the lead, so you needed a certain amount of strength to pull it so that it would tear and look like you're tearing up metal, which it was, but it was soft metal. So the idea was that the Pumaman didn't, he was able to just tear off the top of a car and pull the guys out and give them the business. We're not talking anything like the budget of Superman. Superman was done totally, for the most part, I'm sure was done very differently.
Jump now! I'm not a bird. If you stay there, you're a dead duck. Fly!
So there were no wires in Pumaman. I'm suspended from a boom arm. And initially what they had prepared for me was a leather kind of harness, short pants that they would put underneath the costume and suspend me from the boom behind, and behind me would be the blue screen. But what they originally made just was awful. I told them, it can't work and you're going to see it, so you've got to make something better. I was perfectly prepared to do the work, but I said this will be very visible and it's extremely uncomfortable. So they remade it, and it made it more tolerable.
Thank you. You do not abandon.
The flying aspect of it, because we sort of knew about Superman and everything, and he knew that Superman didn't move, and basically was just, if he moved anything, it was his arms. And he didn't want to be, I think, I'm guessing what his thoughts were. He was afraid it looked too static. So he would direct me to move my arms and my legs. And his expression was swimming in the air. So that was another one of those pet expressions that sort of stayed with everybody, because I wasn't too sure that that would work out so well with me swimming in the air with my legs and arms moving. But that's what he wanted, and that's what I did. And he would direct me, he would say, because he wanted more motion. And that's the only thing that I basically could do on that, being suspended from a pole. So I would do it when he would ask me to do it.
Let go of me!
Part of the taking off and landing was also something that was amusing to me. They bolted ski boots on a platform, and they then raise and lower the platform so they could get me, they could get that height coming down and going up. And I'm a big skier, so for me that was a lot of fun, because then I could just get in the ski boots, and I told them how they had to mount them and so forth and so on. So that was part of that thing, which was sort of fun. They had no trampoline, but I would do the beginning. I would jump. I would be in the location they wanted me to do, and then I would jump as high as I could, and I would jump off something down, and they would get me down, and then if I had to, whatever I had to do, fall down or whatever.
Where did you come from?
And teletransporting was a whole nother trick that we used to do. And I'm not supposed to tell you that I can do it, but that's okay. What was my first reaction to the movie? Well, I wasn't sure what the public's reaction was going to be, although I knew that it had opened in Europe, and I knew that it wasn't a huge hit in Europe. So, and I didn't know what would happen to it. It was more camp than I thought it would be. And I could see that it was amusing on a level that I didn't think the director intended. And I knew that we were trying to be as serious as we could be, all the actors with the roles, and make it play the way that he wanted it to play. And I realized when I saw it that it wasn't playing that way exactly. But I think it never would have gone and been as camp and turned out the way it did in terms of pleasing certain audiences who like this kind of movie if we had tried to make it funny or amusing or camp. So I think the way it turned out is by playing it as seriously as we could. It came out the way it did, and so the people thought it was camp and enjoyed it on the level that you needed to be at to enjoy this kind of a film. I have friends that occasionally keep track of what's happening with the movie. I don't. And so they said, you're not going to believe this, but the Pumaman has been on Mystery Science Theater, and they have audience people cracking jokes as the film is going on.
No one knows who they were or what they were doing.
Now, you understand, it did play, and it was in TV Guide before it was on Mystery Science Theater. Sometime after it came out, it was on late night on TV, and I actually had framed its listing and its rating, you know, which wasn't very high. I'm happy if anybody enjoys the film, and I like getting the notes that I've gotten, and I've gotten some really nice notes of people getting a kick out of the movie and liking the movie, which always, I'm happy that they like it. Those kind of wisecrack remarks didn't go well with me. I didn't care for that, because again, as an actor, you're trying to do what the director wants, what his vision of the film is, and you want people to enjoy it on whatever level they can.
Pumaman, he flies like a moron. Dun, dun, dun.
And just to make complete sarcastic remarks and fun about it, I didn't care for it. In fact, some of it I thought was offensive, but I understand that that's what they wanted to do and they thought it was funny, so I understand the motivation for that, but I didn't care for it. And there's no question that I think Mystery Science Theater did help make more people aware of the film and see the film, even if they saw it on there. So I mean, I think that's excellent. You know, I'm happy that that happened. But as I said, if you're actually in the film and you hear some of those remarks, you don't necessarily say, "Oh, geez, come on," you know.
Goodbye, brother.
Goodbye, brother.
Honor it.
Don't worry.
Goodbye, Pumaman.
So after a certain number of years, which is quite a few years actually, I decided that the personal price was getting very high and I had other fish to fry and I needed to build equity, and I did not want to have my working life depending on the whim or of people that I didn't necessarily respect who were going to doing the hiring. And so I decided to come back to seeing if I could do the trial work again. I wasn't sure because I'd been gone over 10 years, and a friend of mine brought me a file. I told him I'd just do a deposition. He brought me a file that said go pick a jury in the Bronx, which I ended up doing. Later on, I had a partner and we worked together. I was on the plaintiff side helping injured people and their family, and then I went out a little bit later, quite a bit later. I started my own firm after that firm broke up. But I am also involved in a lot of other very important projects. Oh yeah, I'm gonna have to go now. Thanks a lot. Where's my belt?